Hey everyone, ready to dig into a topic that could save your tomato plants this season?
I am.
We're talking bacterial canker, and it can really wreak havoc if you're not prepared.
It's true. This tiny bacterium, Clevibacter michiganensis, can really sneak up on you.
Right, and we don't want anyone to go through all the work of planting and caring for their tomatoes only to lose them to disease. So today, we're arming you with the knowledge to spot it early, understand how it spreads, and most importantly, learn how to prevent it from ruining your harvest.
Because no one wants to see their tomato dreams dashed by a tiny bacterium.
Exactly. So bacterial canker, what is it exactly?
Well, simply put, it's a bacterial infection that affects tomatoes, and it's a tough one to beat. This bacteria can linger in the soil for up to, get this, 3 years, just waiting for a chance to infect a new plant.
3 years. Wow, that's pretty persistent. So even if you had infected plants a few seasons ago, that bacteria could still be hanging around.
Unfortunately, yes. That's why crop rotation is so important, but we'll get into that a bit later.
Okay, so we know it's patient and loves tomatoes, but how does it actually get into the plant?
Good question. Think of it like this. Your tomato plants have a natural defense system, a kind of protective barrier. But this bacteria is sneaky. It looks for any weakness, any opportunity to get past those defenses.
So we're talking wounds, cracks, those little tears that can happen naturally as the plant grows.
Exactly. Even something as simple as transplanting your seedlings can leave them vulnerable.
So even if we're super careful, there's still a chance. That's a bit unnerving.
It's true. And once it's inside, it goes straight for the plant's circulatory system, its vascular system, essentially the plant's network of veins and arteries.
Wait, plants have veins and arteries? Okay, that's blowing my mind a little. But it makes sense they need a way to transport water and nutrients just like we do.
Exactly. And that's why bacterial canker can be so devastating. By clogging up the plant's vascular system, it disrupts the flow of water and nutrients. It essentially chokes off the plant's lifeline.
So it's like creating a traffic jam inside the plant, preventing those vital supplies from getting where they need to go. That's pretty scary.
It is, which is why it's so important to be able to spot the signs early on.
Okay, so let's talk about those signs. What should we be looking for?
Well, it can show up in different ways, but one of the first things you might notice is wilting, often starting on just one side of the plant or even just one side of a leaf.
So if half leaf is wilting, but the other half looks fine, that's a red flag.
It could be, yeah. Especially if you're also seeing other symptoms like browning edges on the leaves or these unusual spots that can develop.
Unusual spots, what do you mean?
These are called bird's eye spots. They're these small white spots with a dark center, almost like a bullseye.
Bird's eye spots, huh? Okay. And those can show up anywhere.
They can, unfortunately, on the leaves, the stems, even the fruit itself.
No way. So even if you manage to get some tomatoes, they might still be inactive.
It's possible, yeah. And it's not just the surface. You might see internal discoloration of the fruit as well, but that's harder to spot without cutting into the tomato.
Okay, so we've got wilting, browning edges, bird's eye spots.
Yeah.
Those all sound like pretty clear warning signs. What about the stems? What happens there?
The stems can also give you clues. You might see these dark brown or black lesions, almost like the plant has a bruise. And sometimes those lesions can get so bad that they split open, which is where the name canker comes from.
Ouch, that sounds painful.
It's not a good sign, that's for sure. And if you were to cut open an infected stem lengthwise, you'd likely see discoloration in the vascular tissue, those inner veins we talked about. Often it looks like light brown streaks. Remember how the bacteria targets the vascular system? Well, that's what you're seeing.
Wow, so it's like the infection leaves a visible trail.
Mm.
Okay, this is getting a little too real for me. But seriously, this is all great information to have. So let's say we spot some of these symptoms. How do we know for sure it's bacterial canker and not something else?
That's a great question. Visual inspection is a good first step, but it's true that some of those symptoms can be confused with other tomato diseases or even nutrient deficiencies. If you're really unsure, the best thing to do is to reach out to your local extension office or a plant diagnostic lab. They can run tests to confirm the diagnosis.
So it's like taking our plants to the doctor.
Exactly. It's always best to get a professional opinion if you're unsure.
Makes sense. Now, I know we've been focusing on tomatoes, but you mentioned earlier that this bacteria isn't just limited to tomatoes, right? It has a type.
It does. It seems to really like the nightshade family.
Nightshade family. So what other plants are we talking about?
We're talking peppers, eggplants, potatoes, basically. If it's a close relative of the tomato, it's at risk.
Wow, so this bacteria could really do some damage to a whole veggie garden if we're not careful.
You got it. That's why understanding which plants are vulnerable is so important, especially when you're planning your garden and thinking about crop rotation.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've met the enemy. We know how it operates. We've seen its handiwork. Now for the million-dollar question, what can we do about it? Is there a cure?
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but once a plant is infected with bacterial canker, there's no magic cure.
Oh, no. So we just have to watch our tomato plants suffer. There's got to be something we can do.
Don't worry, we're not giving up just yet. While we can't cure an infected plant, there are definitely things we can do to manage the situation and protect the rest of our gardens.
Okay, that's a relief. So where do we start? What are our options?
Well, there are a few different approaches we can take. Let's start with the chemical options.
Okay, so are we talking about going full-on chemical warfare here? What kind of options are out there?
Hold on there. Before you go stocking up on pesticides, it's important to note that chemical treatments are generally more for prevention or slowing the spread. Once a plant is infected, even chemicals have a tough time reversing the damage.
Okay, so it's more about preventative measures than a cure-all, kind of like taking our vitamins to avoid getting sick in the first place.
Exactly. Copper-based bactericides are commonly used. You might see them at the garden center.
So those are more of a preventative measure. What about if it's already taken hold? What do we do then?
Unfortunately, once it's in, it's in. Chemicals won't reverse the damage already done, and this is important. Overusing those chemical treatments can actually do more harm than good in the long run.
Oh, how so?
Well, just like if we overuse antibiotics, bacteria can develop resistance. The same thing happens with plant pathogens.
So we could be creating superbacteria that are even harder to fight.
Precisely. So it's about finding that balance, using chemicals carefully if needed, but also looking at other options.
Right, because just blasting everything with chemicals isn't the most sustainable or environmentally friendly approach either. So what about some of those other options you mentioned?
Now we're talking. Let's dive into the world of organic management.
Music to my ears. So what's the organic approach to battling this bacterial bad boy?
Well, one area showing a lot of promise is the use of beneficial microorganisms. We're talking about introducing good bacteria and fungi to the soil, to outcompete the bad guys.
So it's like giving your plants a boost of good gut bacteria like we're always hearing about these days.
Exactly. There's still a lot of research being done in this area, but the results are looking promising.
That's pretty cool. What else is there?
Another area people are looking into is using plant extracts. Certain plants have natural antimicrobial properties.
Like how people use garlic to fight off colds.
Exactly. Neem oil and garlic extracts are a couple examples that are being studied for their potential in managing bacterial canker.
Okay, so some interesting things are being done to fight back once the bacteria is there.
Yeah.
But let's be real, prevention is always better than a cure, right?
100%. And when it comes to bacterial canker, there are a lot of really simple things you can do to significantly reduce your risk.
Okay, lay it on me. I'm all ears. What's the secret to keeping this bacteria out of our gardens?
It all starts with healthy plants. A strong, healthy plant is like a fortress, much harder for those bacterial invaders to break through.
Makes sense. So how do we help our plants build up those defenses?
The first line of defense is your seeds. Always, and I mean always, start with certified disease-free seeds from a reputable supplier.
So no planting those random tomato seeds you find in the back of the pantry.
Probably not the best idea. You never know what might be lurking on those.
Okay, certified disease-free seeds, check. What's next?
Now, this might sound a little strange, but a hot water bath for your seeds can actually do wonders.
A spa day for seeds. Tell me more.
It's really quite simple. You basically soak your seeds in hot water. We're talking around 122 degrees Fahrenheit or 50 Celsius for about 25 minutes. It sounds crazy, but it can really help eliminate any bacteria that might be on the seed coat.
Wow, who knew? So it's like giving your seeds a little preemptive cleaning.
Exactly. And while you're at it, don't forget about your tools. Sanitize those pruning shears, trowels, anything that comes into contact with your plants.
Because we don't want to be spreading the bacteria around accidentally.
Precisely. It's easy to overlook, but those tools can harbor the bacteria and spread it from plant to plant.
Okay, so we've covered our seeds, our tools. What about watering? Any special tips there?
Yes. Watering is a big one. Try to avoid overhead watering as much as possible.
You mean like using a sprinkler?
Right. When you have those water droplets splashing from the soil onto the leaves, it can create those little entry points we talked about earlier. Plus, it keeps the leaves wet, which is basically an open invitation for bacteria.
So drip irrigation or soaker hoses are the way to go?
You got it. They deliver the water straight to the roots where it's needed most and keep those leaves drier.
Makes sense. Okay, so to recap, certified seeds, hot water treatment, clean tools, avoid overhead watering. So it's
Yeah.
all about being proactive.
Exactly. And of course, don't forget about crop rotation. We talked about how this bacteria can survive in the soil for years. So planting tomatoes in the same spot year after year is just asking for trouble.
So if we want to avoid a bacterial party in our gardens, we need to switch things up a bit.
Exactly. Give those tomatoes a break and plant something else in that spot for a few years. It'll make a world of difference.
Crop rotation, check.
Mm.
We are on a roll here. You know, I was doing some research for this deep dive, and I came across something called Farmonaut. Have you heard of this?
I have. It's a really innovative approach to plant disease management.
It sounds super high-tech, but I'll admit I'm a little fuzzy on the details. It mentioned something about using satellites to detect plant stress. How does that even work?
It's pretty amazing, actually. Farmonaut uses satellite imagery to monitor crops from space.
From space? Are you serious? That's next level.
It is, and what's really cool is that it can often detect stress in plants before you see any visible symptoms.
Wait, so it's like having a superpower that lets you see disease before it even happens. That's incredible.
You could say that. It works by analyzing the light that's reflected back from the plants. Different wavelengths of light can indicate things like chlorophyll content or water stress, which can be early warning signs of disease.
Wow, so we're talking about cutting-edge technology that can help us stay one step ahead of this bacterial canker.
Exactly. It's all about early detection and intervention. The sooner you know there's a problem, the better equipped you are to address it.
That is incredibly cool. I can see why you're so excited about it. It's like having a secret weapon in the fight against plant diseases.
It really is a game changer.
Well, I am definitely going to have to look into Farmonaut. It sounds like something every gardener, heck, every farmer needs to know about. But for now, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've met the enemy bacterial canker. We know how it operates and how to fight back. But what happens if, despite our best efforts, we still find ourselves facing a bacterial canker outbreak? What are the immediate steps we can take to contain the damage and protect our remaining plants?
It's true. We've been focusing on individual strategies, but it really does take a team effort to combat things like bacterial canker.
Absolutely. We need all hands on deck to protect our tomatoes and everything else we love to grow. So how does that collaboration actually work? What does it look like on the ground?
It takes many forms. Researchers around the world are constantly sharing their findings, things like data on the bacteria's genetic makeup, new techniques for early detection, even those resistant varieties we were just talking about.
It's like a global network of plant detectives all working together to crack the case.
Exactly. And it's not just scientists. Growers are also sharing their experiences. What's working for them in their specific climates and soil conditions, which organic methods they've found effective. That kind of farmer-to-farmer knowledge is so valuable.
It's like a global gardening support group.
You could say that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have policymakers who play a crucial role in preventing the spread. They can implement regulations on importing seeds or plants from areas known to have the disease, for example.
Right, because even something like contaminated seeds can have a huge impact.
Absolutely. So it's really this interconnected web of research, practical knowledge and policy that all work together to help us stay ahead of this bacterial adversary.
It really is pretty incredible when you think about it. This global community coming together to protect our plants and ultimately our food supply.
It is. It just goes to show we're all connected, even in the garden. Those challenges we face as gardeners, whether it's bacterial canker or a pesky aphid infestation, they're often shared by countless others around the world. And by working together, sharing what we know and what we've learned, we can find solutions that benefit everyone.
It's a good reminder that we're not alone in this.
We're all a part of something much bigger.
That is a great note to end on. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the microscopic world of bacteria to the global effort to combat these plant diseases. What are some of the key takeaways you hope our listeners will walk away with?
I hope they'll come away feeling empowered, not overwhelmed. We've learned that bacterial canker, while a serious threat, is not unbeatable. With a little knowledge and by being proactive, we can protect our tomato plants and enjoy a bountiful harvest.
Exactly. Awareness is key. By understanding how bacterial canker spreads, by recognizing those early warning signs, and by implementing preventative measures, we can really reduce the risk of encountering this disease in our gardens.
And even if we do find ourselves facing an outbreak, we've learned about the steps we can take to contain it, protect our plants, and minimize the impact on our harvests.
So to our listeners out there battling bacterial canker, or any gardening challenge for that matter, remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about your plants and what they face, the better equipped you'll be to help them thrive.
And don't ever underestimate the power of community. Connect with other gardeners, share what you're going through, ask for advice. You'll be amazed by the support and knowledge out there.
Couldn't agree more. Well, on that note, it's time for us to sign off. Until next time, happy gardening, everyone.
Happy growing.